Okay, good morning. So we're up to Shin Yud Ches Seif Yud Dalet. Says the Mechaber, Mutter Litein Kitein Shalmayin, you're allowed to put a flask of water, a sham mashkim or other liquid, Keneged Ha'esh, near the fire, Lahofik Tzinoson, to take away the chill of the water, of the liquid. So long as you put it far enough away from the fire, so long as you put it far away enough that the water won't be heated up to become yatsa ledesbay. Pirush mischamemes v'nichves. That means that it gets to the point that it will, it could singe, it could scorch a person. That means that it could scorch, it could burn the stomach of a child. That's how hot we're talking. But you can't bring this cold flask of liquid close enough to the fire that it will become yatsa ledesbay. Also, even to put it there for a short while, just to take away the chill of the water, that's not allowed. Because if you intend to leave it there just for a short time, because if you forget and you leave it there longer, it could come to cook and get to yatsa ledesbay. And that is also true with fruit or other things, which can be eaten raw, that you shouldn't leave it close enough to the fire that it could come to cook. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah Peiches, that you can bring your flask of cold liquid and put it near the oven or the fire, so long as it doesn't get to yatsa ledesbay, and as long as you leave it there, it's never going to get to yatsa ledesbay. That it shouldn't get to yatsa ledesbay. Well, so how would we define that? That the place where the stomach of a child would singe if the liquid falls on it. We can't judge it with the yatsa ledesbay. It's a very subjective type of measure, and therefore the Shulchan Aruch says that we describe it as the stomach of a child might get scorched by the heat of this liquid. Okay, and we're worried that he might forget it there. That's the concern. So you can't even leave it there for a short time if you're worried that if you leave it a bit longer, it will get to yatsa ledesbay, because you might forget it there. And that is also true for Paris. You can't leave fruit, even though they can be eaten raw, you can't leave them close to the source of the heat, to take off the chill of this fruit, because you might forget it and it might come to roast. Even if these items can be eaten raw, nevertheless we still say it's also to shaykh ben bishul, because it is shaykh bishul for these items, because it can improve if they are cooked. But if you put them far away from the fire, even things which cannot be eaten raw would be okay. Fine. And we can't mock them. Mutter litein aluntis or klioferes somach leish. However, you are allowed to put a towel or klioferes, some sort of earthenware kli, somach leish lachamamay, to heat it up. For example, you've got food in a pot which is not cooled down, and you want to maintain the heat of this food, even if it's so close to the fire, that the kli could become melted there, or the towel could become burnt. There we're not worried. But obviously the guy's interest is not for the pot to burn or for the towel to burn, and therefore, first of all, it's something which you don't intend to happen. You won't forget it there, because we're not worried you're going to leave it there too long, because obviously if you do, it's going to melt or it's going to burn the towel, and therefore we're not worried about that. So just to summarize all of you said in your dalet, that if you've got a flask of water, of liquid, you can put it close to the fire or the urn or the thing or the oven, in a way that it's not, if you're confident that it's not going to come to Yom Tzeledes Bay. But if it's going to get to Yom Tzeledes Bay, then you cannot do it, even for a short time, because maybe you'll forget and you'll leave it there and you might get to Yom Tzeledes Bay. Okay, good, that's your Dalit.
The last bit is an empty cake.
Even if it's got food in it, you want to maintain the heat, and you wrap it down, you put it, okay. Tesvov. Dovashin is special called tzarchei. Now this is an important sieve. Dovashin is special called tzarchei. If you've got something which is fully cooked, v'hu yovesh, and it's dry, she'ein bei marag, there is no liquid to it. So imagine like a cold schnitzel or a cold piece of chicken which hasn't got any liquid on it. You're allowed to put it close to the fire, even if it's Yom Tzeledes Bay. And of course the rule is because ein bishul acha bishul, and once it's been cooked, we don't cook it again. And therefore this is something which we do regularly. We would take, let's say on Shabbos morning, you want to heat up some cold schnitzel, and you put it in a tray, and you put the schnitzels there, and you put it in an upturned keli on top of the hot plate, or on top of the urn, or something like that. That's meisim b'chol Shabbos. We do that the whole time, based on this halacha, because ein bishlacha bishul, and therefore davishin is bashal by kol tzarchesh v'yovesh. You got something which is fully cooked and it's dry. There's no liquid there whatsoever. Mutzel anicha keneged hamadura. You can put it close to the fire. Hayat tzeledes bay. Yossi, you got a question? Oh, so we'll see in a sec. The Mishnah Berurah is going to talk about mechzik and mevashel. So there's a separate thing. On one hand, we're not worried about cooking because ein bishlacha bishul. On the other hand, we're worried that the bypasser might say, "Hey, you're putting things in the oven," and that's not allowed. Mechzik and mevashel. Okay. So says the Ramah, "Vafilu nitztanin kvar." Even if it's cooled down, right? So your schnitzel is cold, no problem. Avalim hu reseach. But if it's boiling hot. So for example, if it's a liquid, let's say you've got a liquidy chulent or you've got soup or something like that, then if it's still hot, then you can put it close to the fire. And there are those who say the kol she'ein noisne al gabi ha'esh ayakir mamish rak samachla. If you're not putting it mamish on the fire, but you're putting it close to it, I feel that it's standing mutter. For a liquid, even if it's cooled down, it's okay. For nagula hakol bazeh, and then it's standing the gamrei. That's very famous with the Ramah, and we are knowing to be makel so long as it hasn't cooled down fully. Or kamesha kosafti le'el siman reishon gimel, like we said previously in reishon gimel. Okay, let's do the Mishnah Berurah. Sivkot and sadi base. Davishin is bashal. So this is a very important halacha. So again, you've got something which is dry and cooked. So let's say, for example, a schnitzel or cold meat, and you want to heat it up on Shabbos, so long as there's no mechzik and mevashel, you want to put it in an upturned kli on top of the hot plate, something like that, then no problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah, tzadi beis, hatam dekimin tekvan nispashel, since it's already cooked, shuv ein bozeh mishum chashash bishel. We're not worried about any further cooking. Or miu alo eish mamish also, this is your point, Yossi. Or miu alo eish mamish also midrabanon v'pnei shenirik mevashel. You can't put it directly on the fire because that's nirik mevashel. But by you putting it sort of a bit away from the fire, that most people don't cook in this way. Because it's not mechzik and mevashel. You don't cook schnitzel during the week by putting it on an upturned kli on a hot plate. Or you don't put it on top of your urn or something like that. And therefore there's no mechzik and mevashel. And therefore, since ein bishlach bishul, there's no cooking, there's no mechzik and mevashel, no problem. You can't put it too close to the fire because then it gets a bit too much like mechzik and mevashel. You've got to put it a little bit away from it. Okay, cold tzarka v'yovesh. Now what are we talking about? We're talking about food which is dry and fully cooked. Because if it's not fully cooked, then you've got a problem. Even if it's dry, and it could be hot, but if it's not yet fully cooked, yesh ba'oid mishum bishul, you've got, it might still cook further. So imagine you've got a schnitzel which is 70% cooked, and it's still raw in the inside, and you want to put it, on top of the hot plates. That you leave it there for a few hours, and it will come to cook through more. That's a problem because that's bishul on Shabbos. So you've got to make sure that we're talking about something which is fully cooked beforehand. And therefore, if there's still a bit of cooking to go, you can't put it in a place where it will get to Yatzalet Bay. We have a dova lach, and if it's a liquid, afilu b'chol tzorka yesh b'oid mishum bishul im nistanin. If it's cooled down, then you've still got a problem because it's going to by reheating it, you're essentially cooking it. Mashe pasuk ha'machaba reish sivtale, like the machaba says in Dalet. K'neget ha'madura, nokat neget ha'madura v'lo etz ha'madura. It says opposite the madura, not next to the madura. Lahayros to teach shetzorich laharchik k'tzas min ha'madura. You've got to distance it a little bit from the madura. And therefore, because there's another concern. If you put it too close to the fire, you might come to do chitu, you might come to stoke the fire, which of course is awesome on Shabbos. And now that Chachamim have required you to distance it a little bit, that's enough of a heka, of a sort of a reminder, that you won't come to be mechata. Says the Mishnah Berurah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom. 5 lines from the bottom. I've seen various achronim that you make a standalone fire. When you've got a sort of a pile of wood inside the oven, you can't put a kadera there, even if it's a bit away from the flame, because at the end of the day, it's a makom where it is and it's no worse than putting it into an oven which is not grufa, which has not been, the coals haven't been taken out. There, even if you don't put it next to the fire, if you don't put it on the base of the oven, but if you do it on some sort of kli which is mafsik, for example, your upturned kli on the hot plate, that would be okay. Okay, so even if your schnitzel or your meat or whatever, your kigel is cooled down, no problem. And that would be okay according to the mechaba only for something which is yovesh. Even if it's boiling hot, it doesn't have to be so hot. That's that. And there are those who are makel when it comes to liquid, that if it's not nitztanin, that it's okay. That even in the first says even if it's nitztanin, it's mutter. Says Mishnah Berurah Sadi Zayin, Paliga mechaba disvirle the dafka shu yovish. The mechaba says, when can you do this? Dafka if it's yovish. When do we say ein bishlach habishul? Dafka if the item is solid. Avul bedavar lach, but a liquid shen nitztanin yesh bishlach habishul. We are chayshesh for bishlach habishul. The dezu svirle the ein bishlach habishul b'chol gav afin nitztanin legamri. And this opinion is that afilu nitzan lemuta, even if it's a liquid, we're not worried about it. If it's been cooked previously and now it's cooled down, it's got a status of mavushal and ein bishlach habishul. However, the Ramah concludes and says v'nagu lahakel im lo nitzan legamri. So long as it hasn't cooled down fully, then you're allowed to keep keep the liquid warm. Says the Mishnah Berurah, al gabi ha'esh de'im noisin al gabi mamish. If you put it on top of the eish mamish, af she'em ba'isur deraisa l'didu al kol podem osim midrabanim mipnei shenir k'mavashal. You've always got that issue. V'gam de'osi lachtas b'kacholim. And the second issue, you might come to machata b'kacholim. Last Mishnah Berurah Sadi Tes, after the das ha'machaba kimishin istanim ma'at mechamim also eni yatzel elis bay shuv yesh b'mishum bishul. If it's fully cooled down, then we're worried about bishul. But if it's not fully cooled down, we are makel. The same chin bezer ayesh mekinin calls manshalen nitztanin legamrei. We're somech on this ramah the yesh mekinin so long as it has not been nitztanin legamrei. So just to summarize, what have we said today? Yud Daled. We said if you've got a flask of cold liquid and you want to put it near the fire, just to take the chill away, that is okay, so long as we're not worried it's going to get to Yad Tzeledes Boy. If it is going to get to Yad Tzeledes Boy, then it's not allowed even for a short period of time, because you might forget and leave it there and it might come to Yad Tzeledes Boy. And then the next halacha in Tes Vav is a very famous halacha of Ein Bishlach HaBishul. The Mechaber says that specifically for Yovesh, and therefore that is what we do. Every Shabbos almost, you can take cold meat which has got no liquid on it, so long as it's fully cooked, you're allowed to put it close to the fire or an upturned keli in a hot plate, something like that, to warm it up, because ein bishlach habishul. When it comes to liquids, although there is an opinion that if it's been cooked previously, even if it's nistanan legamre, that it's mutzah. However, we go like with the Ramah. The Ramah concludes and says, "Nagu lahakol bazeh im lo nistanan legamre." So long as it hasn't fully cooled down, then you are okay. There's a long footnote here. Exactly what is the shear of not fully cooled down? It's got to be somewhat drink like your hot tea. You still would drink it, as a cup of tea or a coffee or something like that. It hasn't fully cooled down. Okay, Peseda. That's a good place to stop.